Vietnam War, are they were active during the Vietnam War in the 70s?
But
أنا welcome دكتور سهيل جنوشي. السلام عليكم دكتور سهيل.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم
Brother
السلام.
Gabriel asked about the three-party system in America, why work, why doesn't work. And my question, is the Muslim community in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, they worry about Vietnam War? They were active in that issue, or they never care about it?
I don't know. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. I'm not sure about what was the reaction of Muslims at that time. But in general, the trend was not to be involved in mainstream issues. And we have been involved only in issues that affect us directly, either here or abroad. Yeah. So that was the trend. So if it is, it's started to change recently, but not to a very significant extent. I mean, even when there is a disaster, usually, and the relief work, it's mostly when it affects a Muslim part of the world. And when there is a war, we protest only if it is a war that is against Muslims. So that was the trend, and this is not unusual. This is usual for minorities to think as a minority, but it is not appropriate for Muslims, because we are supposed to have a big mission that is much bigger than just our immediate needs. So I mentioned before that I said when civil rights movement happened, Muslims should have been at the forefront, because that's a very, very just cause. And then when the women rights of voting, when there was a movement for women to gain the right to vote, Muslims should be at the forefront, because that's unfair. So we still have a long way to go to start thinking as a mainstream people who are Americans, who happens to be Muslims, and who cares about the well-being of humanity in general, and the country in which we are settling. And so at least if it was hard for the first generation, because we have that problem of spending half of our life somewhere and then the other half here. But I think we should encourage the new generations, those who are born and raised here, to think this way, to think as Americans who happen to be Muslim, and to think about as Muslims who have a mission. And that mission is called Islah and justice. And that's what you should do. Whatever issue being debated, you consult, you find out what Islam has to say about it, and you take that position and you advocate it. And there's a lot of atrocities happened in Vietnam War. So again, I'm hoping that we make that transition, or at least allow it to happen, and leave the new generations alone. I mean, emphasize their Islamic identity for sure, emphasize their roots. I mean, there is nothing to be ashamed of, that you are an American of Palestinian roots, Syrian, Pakistani, Saudi, Indonesian, whatever roots. That's your roots, but at the end of the day, we should prepare them to succeed here, to be effective here, to make a difference here, because that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them and ask us about what we have done in the place where He settled us. Quran describes believers as الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر. wherever they settle, community of believers, wherever they settle, that's what they do. They take, they observe their individual duties, they pray, and prayer is always has a literal meaning, but also indicates all the acts of worship that are direct between you and Allah. And then zakat, same thing. It means zakat, the literal meaning, but also it is mentioned to represent all the activities, all the indirect worship that you do when you worship Allah by serving people. So you can, zakat can be zakat of money, of course, that's the one that is in fiqh, but also sharing your knowledge and volunteering your time and anything that you do to help people. So أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة, and then comes أمر بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر. That wherever they settle, they make that place a better place. They make that place more just. They make it more free. They make it more prosperous. They have an impact. Where are we from this description? I don't think we even come close here.
Dr. Suhail, can you talk why it's hard in America to have the 3-party system or 4-party system instead of just 2-party system?
I think in this country is so complicated, and it is involved in so many parts of the world. First of all, domestically, it's a very complex country. This is the only, it's a continent, it's not a country, because every state, it's like a country in Europe. So first of all, it's a continent, not a country. Huge, the most diverse maybe in the world, where all ethnicities, all religious groups, everybody is here. And then abroad, it is involved everywhere. It's American bases are everywhere, and American soldiers are everywhere, and it is, it does not tolerate big changes or shocks. I mean, if you, in some European country, this term you are ruled by liberal, next term you can have even a communist who's in charge. That's not something that can happen here. This country can disintegrate if it has those. We just seen just one candidate who was a president before is so polarizing that it's challenging the whole balance in this country. People are afraid if he wins, and they are afraid and scared if he loses. That's just to tell you, forget about having many parties and having coalition governments and government that does not finish its term, and every now and then we have to have like premature elections. That's not can happen here. This is too complicated to allow for that to happen. And I think whether the founders or the movers and shakers in this country, they realize that having 2 parties and having the differences within the parties, because if you think about it, the parties in this country, they are not typical. They are not narrow-minded, or they have a very strict ideology. I mean, they say that the Democrat of the South, they are more Republican than Republican of the North, and vice versa. It's not a party; it's a coalition. It's especially Democratic Party. It's really a coalition. It's not real a party. And then also they have this system that in Europe, for example, in other democracies, the party is a block, solid block. That if you're going to vote tomorrow, the party will tell you what to vote, and nobody can defect him. Nobody can. That's not the case here. So that's also allowing that, yes, you are elected as a Democrat or as a Republican, but sometimes you can vote against your party. Why? Because that's the best interest of your district, or that's your career. That's also unheard of, by the way. That's not typical. In most other part of the world or other democracies, the leadership of the party dictates what everybody has to vote, and nobody can defect it. Nobody can vote differently. So that system here, it's making this country stable. And you can see this is probably, I don't know if there are other countries where you need 3 months of transitions, because there is so much to be transferred. I mean, the election happens in November and inauguration in January. So why? Because there is, and then the candidates are preparing their cabinet members from now, then their administration, because it's so complex. Just imagine somebody will transfer to you the files of the Middle East, the files of China, the file of Russia, the file on the Ukraine, the file of South America, so much to be transferred in. So this idea of having some extreme, that's why even within the two parties, this country have been always opposing extremes, like extreme left in the Democrat or extreme right. They never win an election. And when it happens, the country will go back to the middle in the next election. When they make that mistake and elect someone who's very extremely liberal or extreme right, they correct it in the next election, because if you think about it, you find it always tending toward the middle and shunning the extremes. Because again, for all the factors that I mentioned, this is very complex country to run and manage, and does not, because in other democracies, you will find many parties, and you will find party from the extreme right to the extreme left, and then anyone can win the election, and most of the time they end up having to form a coalition government, and coalition means paralysis, means very slow decision making, and that country cannot tolerate that, cannot tolerate coalition governments and political paralysis and instability, where you have every now and then they have to call for an early elections because the government loses or there is a vote of non-confidence, etc. All of this cannot. It's happening in other places. There are places in the world they have a government every couple of years, or sometimes every few months. But those countries are not so complex, are not as complex as this country. So I think people will defend and will, especially movers and shakers, as they say, the establishment will defend this two-party system and will try to keep it no matter what.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
If you don't mind, I will try to ask questions. And it's like I don't want to stop you, and I don't want to ask too many questions. So if you please, like as we're going through them, if you can respond to them, so I can ask you the one after. So just to begin with, I am in agreement with you that there is a two-party system here, and the design of this whole country. And this is my opinion, you did not say that. The design of this, the foundation of this country was built on the two-party system. And we continue, the politicians in the country continue to design the system based on two parties. And what I'm saying here, it's a government, the governor's decision, each state governor's decision, decides and approves the way that congressional districts are divided in the country. So far, so good. I'm just adding uniformity.
wasn't very clear, the point. You said government decide the district?
The governor of every state
Okay.
is the one who approves
Mhm.
the boundaries of congressional districts, House of Representatives, precincts, all of that. And in
Mhm.
some cases, just so if you didn't know that, I'm adding this so everybody can know. In some of the cases, these boundaries can go and divide a parcel. The parcel is the boundary of a household. Can go and divide those areas by parcel. It's just a weird politics in there involved to make that happen. And that's why I'm not convinced that this is one reason why I'm not convinced that a 3 or a 4-party system does not work. The other thing that I have in mind here is like, if the end of the product is 2-party system, why they're allowing 5 presidents to run? It does not make any sense to me. If they do wanna, if the whole system is built in 2-party systems, why they adding in the voting for voting to decide between 5 different presidents?
Candidates.
Yeah, 5 different candidates. It's not making any sense to me. Is it just like to tell the world that we are democratic? And I can see, it's like you said something about coalition and the governments can be created in Europe based on coalition. It's like we have some kind of coalition in here, decision making about some issues. You're absolutely right about everything else that you said, that there is not much of a difference between the 2 parties, but the decisions are made based on coalition. And that's why they pass or they decline some of the issues. Some of them can be very important, but they decline them. So
Yeah.
we're deciding based on issues. The other thing is like when the parties are stubborn, which happens very frequently in the most recent years, they close the government. They cannot even decide on a budget to run the government, and they lock it down. Where this does not happen, and where this does not happen, when the State Department provides money for Israel, for example, it's like that can go through without a questioning, and it can be a president or a State Department decision to do something like that, but it doesn't happen for internal. So there is some gaps in between somehow, and there is some other things. I'm not trying. It's like I'm not denying what all of the points that you listed before, but somehow I still feel like there is some kind of gap.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And just before you go on, and I was not defending the 2-party system, I was explaining it. There is big difference between understanding something
Yes.
and like it or approve it. And I was saying, well, why it's happening and what's the background. It's not like I'm a fan of the 2-party system and defending it. So
Correct.
that distinction has to be always there. There is a big difference between I understand something, I understand where you're coming from, or between I agree with you. I agree with you. That's so I want to make sure that you have that distinction clear. I was trying to explain it, not to defend it.
So it means that you said, I meant like the way that the excuses, and you're absolutely right. You did not say you like this or that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Second thing is you need to differentiate between coalitions. Coalition government is different than coalition lobby. Yes, in this country, you cannot get anything to go through except through coalition. You need to build a broad coalition so that you can convince the public opinion, and then you can push and lobby the decision makers and public officials to go your way, because no group by itself can push their agenda, especially if they don't have a lot of money to pay. So no, that's different than coalition government. Coalition government, it takes long time to form. It's like Lebanon, for example. and Turkey before the AK party. Before the AK party was start to be able to rule by itself, starting in 2002, Turkey was always in paralysis, always. Why? Because all their governments are in coalitions. They take so long to form because we have to divide the positions, and then they take so long to make any decision because you're mixing basically contradictory agendas in one government, and then they never finish their term. That model will not work in this country. The fact that it's so complex and so many decisions has to be taken because it is involved everywhere in the world, and you can't have a coalition government that takes so long to make any decision, etc. So again, that's what they come up with, and they don't have any motivation to change it because of the concern of the risk involved, and they mitigated, if you want. I mean, it's not a good system to have only two parties, but they tried to make it work or to make it better in different ways. Number one is the one that I mentioned. It's the fact that those parties are not very narrow ideological party, but they are broad coalition. So you can have the Democrat from the left to the middle, and you have Republican from the middle to the right. So they are coalitions, so which means that they handle their differences inside. That's why they have primaries. That's also another way they have primaries. There is no primaries in parties elsewhere. And then they mitigated with this idea of, yes, you are elected Democrat or Republican, but at the end of the day, you're going to vote the way you feel comfortable. That's also helping. And the fact that power in this country is so divided. It's divided horizontally and divided vertically because of that federal system. There is the federal, there is the state level, there is a county level, there is a city level. It's so divided. I mean, it's there is no body who has the full power. So there is the decision making is divided vertically and of course horizontally between the judiciary and the executive and legislative branch. It's not perfect. There is no question about it. But compared to other systems in the world, what they were able to achieve, it's a record. It's a record to have a continent like this, to stay together, does not disintegrate, not by force, because the states, they can choose to be independent, to go their way. And we have seen the Soviet Union, the moment the central government weakened, it disintegrated completely. Yugoslavia, same thing, even though Yugoslavia much smaller. So for them, you can't point to another system in the world to tell them, you know what, your system is not good. Look at this system. There isn't something in the world that you can point to that will motivate Americans to abandon this and then to change their system.
Oh, sorry. Go
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Suhail.
Wa alaikum assalam.
When everybody else is done, I have a question. So I just want to let you know. Can I have the question now or later?
Let's see if there are the same topic before we. If it is about something else, let's see if there are more about the topic before we switch.
Okay. No, it's about something different.
Something what?
It's about something different, not on this topic.
Okay.
So just to add my last question about this, does that mean that we might not have a president if they don't get enough votes?
No, there is always
There is always a
yeah, everybody. I mean, they have even they have a procedure if they end up tie 270, they have a procedure through the Senate, I think. They have a procedure to break the tie, but that's very unlikely.
Will never be a tie because 435. It
Yeah,
has to be one over the win. It's 73, 72. That's it. It's no way to be tied.
yeah, very
435, the number, it's odd number.
Mm.
It has to be winner.
yeah. So yeah. No, there will be always this electoral college they have. There is always a winner, and it's going to be until something changed. The closest we came to challenge the two-party system was with Ross Perot. Ross Perot, who ran with Clinton and George Bush, the father, he got 19%, and he could have got more. People were really fed up with the status quo, and they want to change, except the fact that he said one time he's going to withdraw and then come back, etc. Yet he forced himself in the debate. So it was a debate of 3. And then he ended up with 19% of the vote.
Okay, brother Jovid, you can ask your question.
Yeah, brother Sohail, my question is that it's more than a year that you are not us, the world, is witnessing a genocide in Gaza, and all these bombings and these killings of innocent people, literally innocent people, most of them, maybe all of them. But my question is, here in the United States, we really don't witness any public demonstration. Just a few students here and there, over the weekend. And that really did not make a dent in the United States foreign policy, to change it. My question is, what do you think is the reason for this numbness of American public? That's it. That's why
numbness of the American public and
yes.
of Muslims all over the world. There is a serious phenomena of numbness, as you mentioned, and you rightly described, that people are becoming indifferent. People, they don't see any hope in doing anything, and which is wrong, which is totally wrong. Now, let's take it on two sides. Let's talk about the numbness of Muslims first. I mean, what Muslims have done for Gaza in the war and now for Lebanon was really shameful. It's really shameful. The reaction when this genocide is going on for a year, and then all what you do is 1 or 2 demonstrations, and in some countries even that did not happen. Unfortunately, with few exceptions, like Jordan, etc., many of those demonstrations were small. They were not even loud. And they happened only a couple of times, and then people just went back to business as usual. That's very sad. I mean, that's a phenomenon that has to be fixed among Muslims, that they realize that nothing can be fixed quickly, and your job is not to do something to make you feel good. Your job is to keep working, advocating your cause until you fix it, until you achieve goals, but not to go out and vent out your anger and come back and say, okay, I've done my part here. So that's the numbness of Muslims. And part of it, by the way, came from this disappointments. The Muslim world nowadays lives one of the worst case of disappointment in history. And a lot of it came after the Arab Spring, because the Arab Spring raised the hopes and the expectation, and then free fall. So people are very depressed and very disappointed And that's why they are not answering any call. In some countries, neither the regime can mobilize people nor the opposition, which means that people completely numb, that they don't care. And so, in some countries, when people took to the street, they say, all of you have to go. كلكم يعني كلكم. That tells you, but when it comes to the American public, first of all, the relationship between United States and Israel is very complicated, and it needs time to explain it, because it is a two-way street, and it's not as superficial as some people understand it, that one of them controls the other. There is the Zionist lobby, so it controls, and no, it's much more complex than that. Israel was established to fulfill a function on behalf of the many powers or the superpowers, and it's a two-way relationship. It's not only one way. And it is one of the most difficult things to change because of, number one, the strong lobby. Number two, the relationship between the Christian right and the evangelical and the Zionist, or the Zionist Christian or Christian Zionist. Number three is these people, they have done a lot of work before to get their message across, their narrative, that they are a democratic country in the middle of jungle, and they are civilized, and they are under threat because of all those surrounding countries. And there is a narrative, there is a story. They were able to get it through politicians with lobby, but also media and Hollywood and the education system and culture, and you name it. I mean, this is a community that I hope one day will become we become as effective. This is a community that is driven by a cause. It's the wrong cause, it's unfair, it's unjust, but everyone, wherever they are serving that mission or that purpose from their angle, whether you are in the academia or in the media, or you are in Hollywood, or you are anywhere, or you are in Congress. You are they're serving. So we have to realize that, and we can't keep complaining all the time without doing our diligent work. It takes time to change the public opinion, especially like the other side have taken a lot of advantage over us. So in order for us to get our message across, I mean, the American people, they discovered the suffering of the people of Gaza not through our work. They discovered, and because there are a lot of people of conscience, they demonstrated, and they have all those activities, especially in universities. But again, this cannot be. In order to be sustained, there should be a solid core group behind it, pushing that day in, day out. Because those people, at the end of the day, they have many other issues they are concerned about, and this is one of them. And they were mobilized on humanitarian ground, but it is the Muslim community who failed to translate that sympathy into educating them about the root cause of the problem, about the occupation, about the settlement, about this, about that. So we only have ourselves to blame. We can't keep saying that it's the American public does not care, or numbness. First of all, there is a numbness among Muslims. Even here, I mean, what did Muslims do compared to the scope of the genocide? Not much. I mean, it's something that is embarrassing. Yeah. I don't want a brother want to ask questions, so if you can go ahead, and we'll try to answer it, inshallah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want
No, no.
If it's okay, I just want to have like only comment, please. Like only one statement.
Is it you who wanted to ask the question?
No, regarding what you mentioned, I just wanted to add one thing, that one of the main reasons for American public numbness here is, like here, most of the people, they are in chains, they have so much, debt and loan on top of them that they cannot even take a day or 2 day or 3 day off to go in a demonstration. Like literally, we live in an age of modern slavery. Every single American family is, a slave to the bank. And that might be one of the reasons that nobody even dare to say anything, because they are afraid of losing their jobs, losing this, being prosecuted unknowingly. That's
By the way, that's happening even in the Muslim world. This capitalism. People used to have very stable jobs in many Muslim countries. That's not the case anymore. And people used to live within their means. That's not the case anymore. So all people have a lot of debts, a lot of payments, a lot of things, because they're living beyond their means. And you're right. That's enslaving them and making them, first of all, worried about just making ends meet and making those payments. And second, worried about being active in any way may jeopardize or risk their jobs or their financial situation.
جزاك الله كل خير
Was it Brother Jalal who wants to ask question or not? Or
no, that was me, Joe.
Oh,
My
that
name
was
is
you.
Jawed.
Okay, Jawed.
جزاك الله خير دكتور سعيد. See you next Sunday إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم.
Thank you, brother.
Salam.
Inshallah, see you next.
Salam.
Assalamu alaikum.